Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies. Today, the 21st of January 2025. Quite a number of events, most especially we are seeing most of the papers having the inauguration of Trump, and then we are seeing various policies that he has actually passed. And then, in as much as it's in US, but this will have a big impact in the economy globally. So, we just hope that you follow us as we look into it, as well as we're seeing that after the back and forth regarding the telecommunication tariff hike, we're seeing that most of them are, going for NCC have passed it. That should be for 50% tariff. So you can actually calculate it. How much will you be sending SMS, your calls, as well as your data bundle? So quite a number of conversation, controversy, and a number of people have a lot to say about that. So please do well to drop your comment, your views, as they are welcome. I am Sele Elisha Dashon. I'll bring this program alongside Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
All right, we'll go straight into the paper, starting with the Metric newspaper.
On the Metrics newspaper, the first story, 50% tariff hike approval. Implement with transparency, fairness, NSCC tells telcos. You can start with the details on the front page. The English Premier League, despite Sanchez howler, Chelsea beat Wolves to move into top four. In first day as America's 47th president, Trump revoked 78 of Biden's policies to meet Putin to resolve ongoing war with Ukraine. Over 30 billion naira fraud case court adjourns to February 13 as Otudeco orders absence stalls arraignment. You can find details on page 3. The big story on the paper, State of Nation, Professor Akinyemi blows hot. The writer says accepting to be BRICS partner country slap on Nigeria's face. Warns Tinubu against confronting Donald Trump. Lampoon's Kemi Badenoch says she will soon learn her lessons. Alleged 76 billion naira fraud court grants ex-AMCON MD Kuru others 20 million naira bail. Court adjourns Dangote refinery suit on import licenses to January 30. Finance Minister tips Nigeria's inflation rate to drop to 15% in 2025, and I believe Nigerians are looking forward to such a massive drop of 15%. You can find details on page 12. We have a statement from Bob Risky slamming EFCC, saying most wicked people in Nigeria. You can find details of his statement on page 23, and a picture story with the caption fostering executive legislative harmonious relationship, where we can see Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu in a handshake with the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Mojisola Miranda, when the Speaker paid a courtesy visit to the Governor at Lagos House Ikeja yesterday. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, farmers' headers crisis. More northern states adopt Ruga to curb the clashes. More detail found on page 2. Niger explosion, death tolls hit 98. Yesterday we saw it at about 86, and we're seeing that the number has increased to about 98 persons. More detail regarding the explosion can be found on page 17. Court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeku others not properly served. And then here we're seeing Onasaya saying, I serve First Bank Nigeria with dedication and integrity. And then we have Otudeku saying, I will defend my reputation aggressively. You can find all of these on page 30. The big story, which is regarding the 50% tariff hike, Nigerians may spend 6.72 trillion naira on calls. Nigerians may spend 6.74 trillion naira on calls. The writer following that story here says Telkom's group insists hike should have been lower, and then threatens suit ahead of February implementation date. So you can find all of that on page 2. So we have barely about a week plus to enjoy the present tariff until it is being passed into law in February. And Rachel, looking at this, I mean, we've said this already, but I was hoping that they will be considerate and then look into maybe 30 or 35, and then here we're seeing that they have actually gone for the 50% tariff hike. I really know that this will sit well with a number of Nigerians, but I'm hoping to hear what would our lawmakers have to say regarding this. I'm hoping this is where they should speak on behalf of Nigerians regarding such increment as such, because what it means is that Rachel henceforth nobody will be buying maybe data and they will only go for calls and SMS, or nobody will no longer recharge their phone to make calls and SMS and just go for data. But we know we need both because we have people that do not have an Android phone, so you have to send an SMS and all of that. But this is what it is, and I really don't know how this is going to sit with a number of Nigerians.
Because call rate varies, it's difficult to say how much increase will be per minute, seconds to different telecoms company. Because of course, what MTN charges if you're calling to Globalcom or Airtel, it's different from when you are making a call directly to an MTN line and all of that. So it's different. However, for messages, we know that it is phone error at the moment, and that is for MTN. I believe it is a flat rate for every telecommunication company. So if we're looking at a 50% increase, then it means sending text message will now cost Nigeria 6 naira per text and per page. Precisely, because if your text message is two pages, we are looking at 12 naira and thereabout. So you just keep adding the number. It is a high increase. There was once a time text messages was not up to a naira. It went to 1 naira, 2 naira, 2 point something naira, 3 naira, and now we're at 4. And in February, we would be seeing it at 6 naira. It is high. At the same time, this calls for a digital growth, and it cannot be slow. It has to be fast. It has to be quick. If not, Nigerians are just going to spend so much on telecommunication, and you would have no option than to spend that much because we are still backward in some certain ways. Our government have made mistakes. We are the receiving ends of their bad policies and decisions that they have taken so far, and this is one of it, and we are seeing the dividends of their decisions. But what can we do? However, for the people in the technology industry, those who are there in the digital world and the market, I think it is up to them to say, you know what, we can make Nigerians' life easier. The government cannot save us now. And this is also up to private individuals to make certain services available. And by the time the competition is less and very affordable, as long as we have a demand that is meeting up to supply and all of that, with time, maybe we will be able to see that communication won't be this much expensive to Nigerians. But for now, it is our situation. There's nothing we can do about it. We just have to hope for a rapid growth in a lot of sector and in some areas. But for now, I think the best is what we are getting from the government, and that is a 50% and not 60%. And you know, the government made it look like they're doing us a favor that is not 100%. So Nigerians should be grateful that it's 50%. Well, we are grateful it's 50%, but it is still high regardless.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and see what will it be. Still looking at the Punch newspaper, the picture story together following the write-up under Trump returns after 47 U.S. president rejects transgender illegal immigration. So that is to say that in U.S. we have just two gender, either you're a male or you're a female. And then looking at illegal immigration, we are looking at people who actually are residing in the U.S. that didn't follow due process, as well as we're seeing that part of the policy is actually trying to go back on, which was what we have Biden. One of the laws that Biden passed is the fact that you can actually have citizen by birth. So now we're saying that there's no longer citizenship by birth. So you can do well to read more of the policies if you're hoping to actually immigrate to either to the US or whatever means of immigration you want to use. Still looking at the Punch newspaper, Sanwo-Olu pledges to work with the new Lagos speaker. 6 killed, 3 injured in Ogun multiple crashes. More detail on page 4 and 5. Court adjourns Dangote refinery 100 billion naira suit against marketers, with detail on page 3, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, the first story, Sunrise Power suit, Wire won't testify against federal government, former AGF Ondo Akai saying. You can start with the details of this story on the front page. Reps advocate more funding for MDAs. NIMED unveils 2025 seasonal climate prediction February 4th. The last story on the paper, tanker explosion. PDP blames tragedy on hardship. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper on Hatch, we have Nidcon to set the fare at 8.7 million naira for 2025 pilgrims. More detail can be found on page 7. On business, NBS set to launch rebate CPI GDP reports. And as well regarding sport, under 19 Women World Cup, Nigeria stunned New Zealand in historic win. More detail found on page 22. Trump sworn in as the 47th American president after unprecedented comeback. You can find that story on the front page and continue on page 8. Telecom subscribers kick as NCC approved 50% tariff hike. Decision made after extensive consultation coming from officials. It will add to problems of Nigerians struggling to cope coming from the ATCIS Nigeria. More detail found on page 8. Troops eliminated Tunje's son, scores of other terrorists coming from the defense headquarters. Zamfara APC commend the military clampdown on bandits. More detail in the paper. Be patient with our policies, Tinubu begged Nigerians. He has been begging since last year. You can do well to read more detail on that. BVN enrollment rises to 64.8 million in January. And then we have tax reform bills will benefit Nigerians coming from the Afeni Ferry. And that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, another Trump era begins. Potential impact on Nigeria, oil, global trade, climate, gender, and immigration. You can find the details of this story on the front page and continue on page 4, where we can see a picture. President Donald Trump and his wife Melania being sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. Behind them is their son Barron. The big story on the paper, solid minerals. National Assembly doubts federal government commitment to diversifying economy. Summons finance, budget ministers, and budget director general. Ministry of Solid Minerals, budget defense deferred. You can find details on page 3. NCC OK's 50% telecoms tariff hike. Man found to be HIV positive after raping girl with sickle cell disease in Abuja. You can find details of this story on page 27. Alleged 42.3 billion naira fraud. EFCC files 13 count charge against Otudeko and others. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Vanguard newspaper, court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant requests, says Utudeko others not properly served. You can find detail, and we have some of the comments coming from them. You can read that on the front page and continue on page 10. Edu Guba Tribunal journalists attack as DSS APC supporters clash. Wabara is saying, I won't join issues with Wiki. You can find more detail of that on page 11. The big story ahead 2027. Why opposition can't upstage ruling party. The writers say greed of political actors, role of money, pressure from constituencies, fear of losing political relevance, any government in power, AGPI and orientation, absence of a second address, absence on internal party democracy, and then state capture of ruling party, loss of power in electoral empire. You can find all of these reasons why there will be no upstage of the ruling party on page 14. And then we have elevate inflation, a major economic challenge coming from Wale Edu, the Minister of Finance. And then we have on Rivers crisis, why I won't settle riff with Fubara, coming from Wike. You can't win political war against Fubara, reconcile now. You can find who said that and why on page 28. I was saved by God to make America great again, coming from President Trump. You can find out on page 5. NCC approved 50% tariff rise for telecoms operators. More detail found on page 26. And then we have on sport, Okocha calls for support of the new Super Eagles coach. And then we have the immediate action plan, part of the policies that will be overturned by the President Trump. So you can do out to read that and see how you might get affected or any of your loved ones. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, the first story, court condemns media trial, says Otudeku orders not properly served by EFCC. Healthy economy without impact on average Nigerian worries senators. Nigerians to pay 50% more for calls, data, and SMS. I'm unsure of unemployment statistics in Nigeria, says Labour Minister. You better be sure and work towards it. You can find details on page 2. The big story, federal government's free cesarean section. 104 facilities to enlist as pilot phase records 2,819 beneficiaries. This is for expecting mothers. You can find details on page 6. AFCC arraigns Amcon ex-MD, orders on alleged 76 billion naira, $31.5 million fraud. Niger tanker explosion, death toll rises to 98 as Agric Minister mourns victims. Less than 1,000 mines active in NMCO issues 7,000 mining licenses. Less than 1,000 mines active as NMCO issues 7,000 mining licenses. Police foil bandit attacks, rescue 207 trafficked children. Reps declare Tinubu's 595 billion naira allocation to intelligence inadequate. You can find details on page 4, the picture story, also with the headline Anxiety as Trump returns to power, recognizes only two genders. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the leadership newspaper, I don't take this award for granted. Dangote Person of the Year 2024 is saying this detailed on page 32. Trending 18 transmission towers vandalized in 6 days on the numbers Nicom pledge hatch fare at 8.7 million naira. More detail of both trending and numbers can be found on page 2. And we have the Nigerian Communication Commission have approved 50% tariff increase for telecom operators. More detail in the paper. Tanker explosion, death tolls hit 98 victims moved to Abuja. More detail found on page 7. The big story, $2.3 billion Mambida project case. Buhari makes appearance at ICC on Thursday with the rider Ami Paris to put the record straight coming from Obasanjo. Other Nigerian leaders invited to testify. More detail found on page 4. Military closes in on Tunji kills son. You can find that on page 7. And then we have Governor Yusuf donates land for power secretariat. More detail found on page 6. Naira declines to 1,551 naira per dollar amid rising demand. More detail on page 32. We still have the picture story, God Save Me to Make America Great Again, coming from Trump. More detail on page 24, and that's all on leadership newspaper.
On this Nigeria, the big story, Trump at swearing in. God save me from assassin's bullet, says America's decline over golden age here. Ex-presidents Bush, Obama, Biden witness grand event, Hillary present, and Michelle stays away. There will only be two genders recognized by the U.S. government, male and female, a statement from President Trump. You can find details on page 16. Sanctions on banks over cash shortage at ATM timely, statement from experts. Wike commissions 5-kilometer Abaji road, promises another. NCC approves 50% tariff adjustment for telecom operators. The last story here, solid minerals. National Assembly summons Edun Bagudu over poor budgetary provisions. You can find details on page 4, a picture with Trump taking oath of office, and that's all the news on this Nigeria.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Senate minister disagree on position of Nigerian's economy. Trump sworn in as, I take that story, Trump sworn in a second time, vows golden age of America, with the rider dollar softening amid his inauguration, rising uncertainty. More detail in the paper. Big story: NCC OK's tariff increase for telcos. Gaps hike. The caps hike at 50%. NCC OK's tariff increase for telecommunication caps hike at 50%. More detail in the paper. 2024-2025 budget, reps urge federal government to release full capital allocations to security agency. And then we have on 20 December, Lagos generated over $71.6 million. Sanwo-Olu's aid is saying. So why we're saying that we have our inflation as a result of that, and we're saying that during that time, Lagos was able to generate this amount. Do well to read more detail on page 7. 2025 budget, National Assembly summons Edu Bagudu over 9 billion naira allocation to solid minerals ministry. Tanker explosion, lack of value for lives may necessitate a repeat, coming from the NOA. You can read more detail on page 26. Expert project, Naira stability, improve diaspora remittance. More detail in the paper. Court adjourns Dangote 100 billion naira suit against oil marketers to January 30th. More detail can be found on page 7, and that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeko orders not properly served. The big story on Daily Sun, military kill 2G's son, several others terrorists. Dismantles 23 illegal refineries in major raids in 3 states. Police kill 11 bandits, rescue 207 abducted children, foil attacks in Kogi and Katsina. Niger tanker explosion, more tears as death toll rises to 98. High rate of expatriates working in Nigeria without, you can find details of that story inside Parks Without Impact. More details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
Alright, before we take the story further by analyzing the papers, we'll do well to take a break at this moment. We would love to have your own inputs, your own contribution regarding any of the story that's of interest, and when we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies, where we have been looking at a number of stories that have made it to the front page of the paper. We're seeing that NCC have approved the 50% tariff hike for telecommunications. So that is to say Nigerians will be paying more for calls as well as SMS and data. And then we also see most of the papers capturing the 47th president of US talking about Trump, where we've seen that Putin is ready to work with him regarding the war in Ukraine, as well as we're looking at the budget here in Nigeria, where even solid minerals and many others are talking about their budget not being enough. We're looking at the vandalized transmission towers that we're having that happened in like 6 days. So quite a number of stories that are quite of interest. So please do well to drop and chip in. We would love to hear your own thoughts regarding this. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, we will be looking at another paper, which is this day newspaper. In bid to improve service, NCC approved 50% rise in telecoms tariff. You can read that story on the front page and continue in the paper. Prepare implementable budget for approval, National Assembly tells MDAs. And then we are seeing on 2025 budget, Humanitarian Affairs Ministry seek 260 billion naira to create 2 million jobs. The writer following that, House Committee insists 595 billion naira allocated to intelligence subsector inadequate. Senate reject Information Ministry merger, 8.9 billion naira budget. You can do out to read that in the paper. Trump inaugurated the 47 U.S. president, says America must drill baby drill. The writer says vows swift border crackdown, insists under him America will only recognize only 2 genders. Unleashes crew of new executive orders. Biden, Obama, Bush, Kamala Harris attend the event. Tech billionaires Marks Benzo and others flood the ceremony. Ex-President Biden issues primitive pardon for family and others. Putin and other world leaders greet Trump. You can find that story on page 9. We can see picture stories of the people who were present, where we can see the president and his vice taking their oath of office, and that's all in this day newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, court condemns media trial, denies EFCC arrest warrant request, says Otudeko orders not properly served. The writers are statesmen. First from Onasanya, I served FBN with dedication and integrity. And Otudeko is saying, I will defend my reputation aggressively. AFCC versus ex-bank chiefs court adjourns to February 13. NACON fixes 8.3 million naira as 2025 Hajj fares. No compromise on guidelines. We are seeing a massive increase in Hajj fares, and you can find details on page 6. Suleja tanker explosion, death toll rises to 98. Why Nigerians should not panic over fuel hike. This is coming from Ipman. If you want to know why we shouldn't panic, you can find details on page 7. The big story, how Tinubu is stabilizing economy and reducing poverty. Edwin is saying, the writer says, President has an agenda for $1 trillion country. Ministers to intensify diversification, innovation will yield long-term benefits. And then DPRA is making sure that there is no room for monopoly in oil and gas sector. Subscribers kick as NCC OK's 50% tariff hike for telcos. SDP rejects APC's victory in Ondo Council polls. Details can be found on page 27. Troops dismantle 23 illegal refineries. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
A New Telegraph newspaper, amid decay, oil producing state lavishes 1.34 trillion naira, 13% earning, that is in 2024. Allocation rose by 102%. You can read more detail of that story inside the paper. Chinese firm backs Nigerians $20 billion gas project. Still on New Telegraph, we have Niger tanker explosion. We have compiled with presidential directive. This is coming from the federal government. Reps seek full release of 2024 capital budget to intelligence agency. More detail found on page 7. Southern states pilgrims to pay 8.7 million naira. Borno Adamawa zone 8.3 million naira. You can find that on page 4. Alleged 76 billion naira, $31.5 million fraud. Court grant ex-AMCON MD and 4 others bail. You can read that story on page 6. The big story making rounds on most papers, still talking about the telecoms, where we have NCC have approved 50% tariff increase for phone calls, data, and SMS. Says it's in response to prevailing market conditions. Adjustment approved after due consultation. More detail found on page 6. And we have alleged 12.3 billion Naira fraud, lawyers protest as Oteteku Onasenya arraignment store. Detail found on page 6. At least 7 killed as soldiers clash with miners in Ghana. You can find that story on page 6. NECA decries rise in expatriate working without permits. More detail found on page 7. Nigeria's economy will emerge stronger in 2025. Federal government reassures citizens. Reiterates inflation will reduce to 15%. Reform placing economy on the path to recovery, Edu tells the Senate rather. Trump sworn in as 47 U.S. president promises new golden age. You can find that story on page 2 and 6. We have a study that says bullying linked to anxiety and depression in teens, and that's why schools need to take this seriously, no matter the form of bullying. We know they are in this age where they ask a number of questions, their identity, and a number of that. So bullying can only increase their anxiety and depression. So we should look into that study, regardless of whether you are a parent or not. I think it's quite important we read that story on page 27, and that's all on New Telegraph newspaper.
On first year's newspaper, the big story, two genders only. Trump's inaugural speech ignites LGBTQ plus equality debate. We can also see the picture where Donald Trump takes the oath of office for a historic second term, vowing swift action on immigration and U.S. cultural wars as he marks a remarkable political comeback. At the top of the paper, NCC approves 50% tariff hike for MTN other telecom operators. Father of gospel singer accused of killing core member begs for leniency. Police kills 7 bandits, recover 109 livestock in Katsina. Suspended RCCG pastor Oluyamide launches ministry. Federal government targets 21% ICT contribution to GDP in 3 years. Heartbroken parents share harrowing tales of 14 stolen children and babies. Military kills Bello Turji's son, other terrorists in Zamfara. The last story here, vandals attack gas pipelines, disrupt Aba power supply, and that's all the news on First News newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the world of business on Business Day newspaper. 5 things to change after Trump's inauguration. New U.S. president promises to pump more oil. Panic over deportation of illegal immigrants as Donald Trump begins his second term as the president of the United States, returning to the White House for a historic, non-conservative term. His new policies, especially on immigration, energy, and trade, are set to have significant effect not only in the U.S. but around the world. So we can see that what will this mean for Nigeria, our business, our trading. You can do well read that on page 31. Phone calls to cost 16.5 minutes as NCC hiked the rate by 50%. Airtime demand seen unchanged. You can find detail of that on page 31. The big story, where to invest 10 million naira in 2025. Equity fixed income seen yielding high returns. So you can read more detail of that on page 31. And that is all on Business Day newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, Osimhen tops Arsenal's January wish list. Boniface returns to Leverkusen training. Fighter. Saint Boss hails Unachu. Catalans talking about Barcelona eye 6 successive victory. Milan ready to offload Chukwueze. City are back. A statement from Pep looking at the win during the weekend. He can proudly say Man City is back. You can find details on page 4. Ancelotti to quit Madrid end of season. Arsenal sweat over Saliba fitness. You can find details on page 4. The big story, Golden Girls. Nigeria under-19 women's team spreading the cricket gospel in Nigeria. KJ was set for title bout March 1st. Nuno praises Aina's focus in Forest win. And that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. So thank you so much for being a part of this program. Thank you, Rachel, for always doing this with me. We look forward again to doing this program together tomorrow. So please do have a lovely day ahead.